Hello and welcome, legal professionals. In today's video, I am going to be talking about 1 minute to a more organized law firm. And if you can't already tell, I'm super excited to present this to you because as a paralegal with over a decade of experience, I have worked with countless attorneys, and I know how busy they get and how important it would be to rely on their practice management system, especially if you are litigating matters for your clients. And now, if you're not relying on your CRM/practice management system, then after this conversation, you might be compelled to start. These 1 minute to a more organized law firm is for you. Let's start with prioritizing tasks. You can automate your systems by setting up a workflow triggered based on when various actions are achieved by you or your client. For example, when your client completes an intake form, you can create a task for yourself to review their intake form and prepare the necessary documents. I'm going to show you how to do that really quickly. All right, so here we're using Lawcus. And inside of Lawcus, if you're familiar, you can just go to automations and then go to workflows, and we want to create a new workflow. Now, we said that this workflow is going to be based on someone completing an intake form, and this is going to be to assign a task to yourself. So now, you can label this whatever you want. I'm just doing this to set this up for us, and to do this, the trigger would need to be once an intake form is completed. So we'll open up the drop down, and then we'll say that when an intake form is submitted right here. Now we can specify which intake form, and for this example, I'm just going to pick the contact form as the form, and then we'll hit continue. And from here, we want to make sure that it adds a task and assigns it to us. So then we're going to select the action as add a task and then hit next. So the first thing you're going to do is the matter ID, and the matter ID is going to come from the intake form step. So it's going to be intake form from trigger value step, and then the task title. And from here, we'll say that this person, so we'll say that this matter, we can pick the first and last name here. So we can say that this person first name and contact the person to assist with legal services. The start date is going to be just as soon as possible, so we're not going to put 0 business days there. And the due date, we would say that we would want to make sure that we contact this person in 1 business day, so it would be 1 day after the form is completed, and then we'll assign it to whoever. So I'm going to assign it here, and this would take care of this particular step here, and then we'll go ahead and we'll mark save, and that is going to be the way that you set up a workflow to be able to assign a task once an intake form is completed. That's going to be our first 1 minute to a more organized law firm. We're going to move on to the next thing here. If you're like me and you love calendar blocking, you can even automate time by blocking your calendar to prepare for the necessary documents utilizing your CRM, which actually leads me to the next 1 minute to a more organized law firm, and that is automating appointment scheduling. For example, you can automate appointment scheduling based on the same intake form trigger and have the system send an email with the link to your calendar for your client to schedule time to discuss the results from reviewing that intake form. We're going to go ahead and jump into that right now. Okay, so still using the same workflow that we just started here. What we can do now, we've already have our intake form submitted. So to help us out here, we can insert a step and make that step be to send an email to the recipient that completed the intake form. And so who we want it to come from is important. If you have it set up to in your CRM to have your generic inbox set up here, you can have it from that particular person. So that's what I'm doing here. And the next step would be the person that would receive the communication. And we're going to do the person's email address from the trigger of them completing the intake form. Now, here we can say, we can make it personalized and insert the person's first name and just say person's first name. And in the body, we can have the person's name and just say greetings and the person's name. Now, if we really wanted to be really efficient here, we can always use an email from template, and that will just take care of everything right here for us. And all we need to do is to insert that. So you can do that either which way. And now that I think about it, I want to make sure that we do this in under a minute. So what I'm going to do is use the template here. Okay, so here's our fully crafted email, and you will see that it has all the necessary things that we need to have. If you wanted to add something like "we look forward to speaking with you," that's something that you can drop down and add. And as a precursor here, we've already set up our default signature, so the signature will also be a part of this email. Now, one thing to note here is that once you mark this task completed, you can even go a step further and set up a completely separate automation so that once a task is completed, that would ensure that an email is then sent out then. So we can actually set this up to be a little bit different, and I'm going to show you that right now as well. Okay, so here we are, and this is going to be based on a task completed. So what we'll do here is we'll open out this and we'll say that task is completed. In order to do this, you would need to ensure that you have it set up to mark a specific task. So it needs to be a specific task here, right? So what I've gone ahead and done behind the scenes is take the task from the previous workflow that I showed you and pull the description from the title of that specific task so that we can use it here. And before I begin to make the action start, I want to have an entry rule. And we're going to say that if the task title contains or is this, then that will trigger the entry rule. So it needs to have this specific task in order for this workflow to take place. Now that we've had that, we can go ahead and do something here, and the action will then be to send the email to the client. So we're going to go send email and then hit next. And the recipient we're going to choose again is the hello email for the team member, and the recipient that receives the communication is going to be from the previous step here. So in order to do this, we want to make sure that we have the Matter client email to do this. And from here, we're going to just slip in our email template here. Now that it's gone ahead and generated, we're going to go ahead and say copy email template content. Now I pre-populated the subject, but I want to make sure that it has the name of the recipient. So I'm going to pull the name from the Matter client from the previous step, and this is how it's set up here. And from here, we then go ahead and hit save. If we wanted to add another action, we'd hit continue plus new action, but for this, we'll go ahead and hit save. And this is how you would go ahead and set up a task task completion to then send an email. So once you complete the review of the intake form, it will then send an email to the client to have them schedule time to meet with someone on the team to have that intake screening. I mentioned time blocking, so I want to just quickly show that, and it would be still based on the intake form being completed. Okay, so we already have our intake form submitted here, so the action that we would want to choose has to be based on an appointment, and would say add event and hit next. And now we'll choose a title. And we're just going to say review the first name, last name, intake form. And we want to make sure that we select a calendar. And so we're going to just choose a calendar here. And if we wanted to have a matter or lead associated with it, we can choose the matter or lead from the trigger. Now, the participant would just be the participant internally if there was another participant that you'd want to add. And I'm just going to choose this, and then we can say that the start date would be based on when the trigger is completed, no additional business days, and the end date would be the same date, so it would be blocked on the same date. And then we'd do time. So the start time would say, for this, without actually looking at our calendars here, would say 10 a.m. And we would then say the end time would be 12 p.m. So we'd give it about 2 hours of time blocked, and then we'll go ahead and hit save. And that is how you would be able to block time on your calendar from completion of an intake form. Okay, so that's all the time that I have for today's 1 minute to a more organized law firm. What are some 1 minute to a more organized law firm videos that you would like to see or discuss? Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next one. See you soon.